Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Make Your Mark podcast. And oh boy, do I have an exciting guest for you today. His name is Tom Healy. He's passionate about helping organizations drive higher performance from their key people. As a teenager, Tom started his first business, and entrepreneurial spirit only grew further. Over his professional career, Tom has founded 3 successful businesses, published 5 books, and developed online education used on over 100 college campuses. He's delivered 1,000 presentations and helped hundreds of organizations execute even faster. Oh my goodness, Tom, I am super excited to have you and got so many questions for you.
I'm excited to be here. Fire away. Bring them on.
Awesome. So, the very first question, and that's to ask all my guests when they come on first, is when you've done so much stuff, right? But it hasn't happened overnight. It's been a progress. It's been a journey, right? Because a lot of people think, oh my goodness, it's just happened overnight, right? We never heard of them before, and all of a sudden they're here. And we all know that's not the case. So I would love for you to share with our audience today a little bit about your journey and what kind of ups and downs that you went through.
Yeah, it's been a 17-year overnight success.
Wow.
I made the determination I wanted to be an entrepreneur many years ago. I had two mentors of mine that were entrepreneurs. So I was not close with my father, but I had two men that were kind of that mentor father figure type for me. They both own businesses. So as a teenager, I knew, okay, I'm going to go to college, learn about business, and then I'm going to start a business. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I will be an entrepreneur. So that was always in my mind, which I was very fortunate about because, tunnel vision, I never really saw any other path. The game I began playing was, okay, how am I going to make money on my own? And, of course, along the way as a teenager in high school and college, there were little odds and ends. I sold stuff on eBay and did other entrepreneurial sales type stuff. I sold spring break trips and, all these little things to make money. So you get these little bits and pieces of, okay, I'm not being paid anything to do this, but if I create value and generate some type of revenue off of some type of product, I can make money. Wow, that's really cool. The short version of my entrepreneurial journey, if you will, is similar to a lot of people in the sense that it was very tough. It still is tough. I mean, this is not an easy game that we play, but I made the determination right after I graduated college that I wanted to speak on college campuses. And so who's going to take a 22-year-old seriously that isn't famous and wasn't on some reality show? Well, you write a book. That's what you used to do. Now you start a podcast or you do something else. But I had to write a book. So I sat in Starbucks at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning every single morning, and I crafted a book. I published that book. I put myself out there. I started speaking on college campuses. That continued to lead to other things. But to summarize my journey, it's just stop, start. A lot of perseverance, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. It's you talk to anyone, it's an absolute roller coaster, and that's the thing, is not everyone's built for that, and that's okay. But you have to have really thick skin. When you hit those highs, you have to kind of regulate and control yourself. When you hit those lows, you have to kind of auto correct and get yourself back up to even. But it's part of that game, is just how do I not get too high or too low? Understanding that those highs and lows, it's not like, sometimes you think, oh, well, I had a good year or bad year. No, you can have like a good hour and a bad hour, right? I mean, we have this conversation a few hours and I may be way higher, way lower. Still to this day, that's kind of how it works. But it's fun. I love it. But again, it's not for everyone.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And so Going back to that, actually, I mean, you mentioned that you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur at a young age, right? You had mentors around you at a young age. Now, when you made that decision, were you clear as to what you're getting yourself involved in?
No. And I'm glad I wasn't, because I probably wouldn't have done it.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
for me, there were a couple things that were happening. I when you're really young, you don't need a lot to live off of.
Mhm.
So, being poor's a lot easier when you're young. So, that's why I always encourage people, the sooner you start, the better, because it, you can't, you can't, take out your entire family, right? You can't ruin anyone else's life but your own. So, it's a lot easier to be broke and struggling, when you're young and single, as opposed to, if you have a family and you have other people that are financially depending on you. So that was that was an interesting thing. The other thing that's, I think, interesting too is when I started, as an entrepreneur, as an adult, a lot of things that now exist didn't, that I think make it a lot easier. So now, and it's a blessing and a curse, but like now, if I were to start my business and I was 21 years old, I'd probably drive Uber, or
Right.
I do some gig work online. None of that stuff existed. So I remember sitting there and I'm like, well, what do I, what it forced me to do, and again, it was a blessing. What it forced me to do is I had to go all in, because I didn't know how to go partially in. Meaning, I thought about, oh, should I like be a substitute teacher, or should I go work at Best Buy? I'm like, what do you do? Like, those are the only two things that I could think of. But like, I'm like, what do you do for some like extra cash? But I'm like, well, if I spend all day there or somewhere else, then I can't do this. So then I'm moving slower. It's really tough, So again, now you could say, okay, well, I'm going to work on my business all day, and then boom, I'll turn on the Uber app and I'll, drive till 2 o'clock in the morning and put a couple $100 in my pocket. I actually think that's a lot easier. So I believe that there are a lot fewer obstacles and excuses to start a business now than there used to be. So, because you can still generate an income and do things on the side. So I think that, I've always said that everyone should have something on the side they're doing, whether they're getting paid for it or not, whether it's a real business or just a hobby, but find something else you can do, because it could turn into a business. It could turn into full-time. As we both know, a lot of people are accidental entrepreneurs. So, my story is, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I made up my mind as a teenager. Well, obviously some people are the opposite. Well, I was working and I was baking cupcakes for some friends on the side. And then I started doing some weddings. And then I opened up a bake shop. And, now we have 5 locations across the city, but it all happens by accident. And so, that's what's fun about this, is there's so many different paths. And even once you get in the thick of things, you even look at like established entrepreneurs, there's so many different, and this is why I think podcasts are so important. You have to listen to different people's perspectives, and you can never put one person on a pedestal or think one person's word is the absolute gospel. The reality is there's so many different ways to do entrepreneurship. There's people that work 7 days a week and have no hobbies and no life, and they sleep 4 hours a night. That's not right or wrong. That's just a way of doing things. There's
Mhm.
other people that say, look, at 5 o'clock, I don't check my emails, and I don't work on weekends, and I don't work on holidays. And if a client emails me at 9 o'clock at night, too bad, they'll get a response the next day. That's fine too. So the beauty of this whole entrepreneurship thing is you can make it whatever you want. That being said, we often forget that, and we often don't have discipline, and we don't have boundaries, and it can become a really challenging game if you have no discipline. You say yes to everything, you let everyone else control your schedule, you bend over backwards for every single person around you. And that's why I think part of what's important is you have to make this journey whatever works for you. And it's going to be different for everyone. And just because someone chose one path doesn't mean you need to. Just because someone's a workaholic doesn't mean you need to. But someone that says, oh, you need to take better care of yourself, and you need to have more balance. That may not be what's best for you, and you may not be at a stage where you can afford to do that. So the moral of the story is you have to take control over your own journey and make it whatever you want to be, but it's got to work for you. It's got to work for, your personal and professional life. It's got to work for your health. Even something as stupid as sleep. Like I find sleep to be really interesting, because some people are morning people, some people are night people. Some people need 8 hours of sleep. Some can get by with less. You have to figure out what works for you. Like, just because some entrepreneur, I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning, I go and work out, and people go, well, how do you do that? Well, it works for me. That being said, I'm not going to work at 9 o'clock at night, because I'm shot. I'm moving so slowly, and the quality of my work is so poor that there's no point for me to be doing it. However, 4:30 in the morning, I'm on the Peloton or doing whatever, and I'm firing. It's some of the best work and thought that I have all day. But you have to figure out what works for you.
Absolutely. Oh my God. So many golden nuggets already, Tom. Oh my goodness. So, all right, I want to go back a little bit, right? Because again, you started this at a young age. But what did your friends and your families think about you going all in, right? And not getting a job, not doing what you're supposed to do? And how did you mentally, emotionally just keep striving forward with maybe negative and, all this kind of things going around you from your family?
So the things I heard to my face from family and friends were, you're way too young to write a book.
Hmm.
You should go get a job. Who's going to pay you to speak in front of their audience?
Wow.
Um, I heard a lot of stuff like that. Now, can I tell you the terrifying part?
Please.
That's what people told me to my face. So what do you think they were saying behind my back?
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here and tell you stories all day. I remember, and this was very early on. I decided to write a book. I wanted to speak on college campuses. We were at a Christmas party, and a kind of friend of the family, not someone that I knew well, but one of those came up to me, and he had a couple of drinks, and oh, what are you doing now? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start speaking on college. And he just looked at me and, who the hell is going to pay you to speak? You're like 21 years old, man. Like, do you have any credibility? Like, that's what he said right to my face. And that's where, I mean, how do you not feel horrible about yourself, right? How do you not like, and so you have to, like, mentally, you have to nod your head and go, oh, well, I think I'm going to, but what you're thinking. You're thinking like, screw you. So
Right.
I heard stuff like that all the time. I mean, I had to borrow a little bit of money. I had to raise a little bit of money to write the book and build the website and do all that stuff. Um, but obviously a lot of people told me no, and told me, and I understand that. I mean, it's not like I had this brilliant business idea. I said, hey, I want to, go be a speaker and build a personal brand. But I had to borrow money to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of things to my face. The first person that edited my book. So I wrote the rough draft of the book, and I gave it to her, and it was a family friend. And I mailed her a copy of it. She mailed it back to me. I'm thinking the entire thing's going to be edited. She edited the first 3 pages in red ink, and then she stopped and she wrote me a note. And the note, which was written on her stationery, and I still have it and occasionally pull it out while I'm speaking to an audience.
Wow.
But the note said, you're way too young to write this book. I think you should put this in your desk drawer, and when you're 30, you should revisit it. And that's what she told me to do.
Wow.
So, I mean, imagine how you felt when you spent 6 months writing this book, taking this risk, trying to build this personal brand, wanting to be an entrepreneur, and you're told by a legitimate book editor not to write the book. And you sit there, and I remember it like it was yesterday. But I sat there in my desk chair. Of course, my desk was also my room. you know I sat there and I'm like, I'm a failure. Like, how am I going to tell people that this didn't work? I told everyone I was going to write a book. I told everyone I was going to speak on college campuses. I sat there and felt sorry for myself for like a minute or two. And then I remember out loud, I had two words for her in that note. You can take a guess as to what they were. I actually said that out loud. And I thought, no, I'm going to do this. But to answer your questions, I heard a lot of stuff, and that was to my face. And it's not like I had a horrible idea. Like, I'm not saying that what I was trying to do was the best idea in the world, but it wasn't crazy. It's not like I said, oh, I have this horrible business idea and I'm trying to raise millions of dollars. I said, no, I want to write a book. I want to speak on college campuses and see where that takes me. And it was a perfectly legitimate idea. It's not like my personality was so bad that people would look at me and go, oh, well, you could never speak on stage, or you'd be too nervous, or you wouldn't have anything to say. I mean, I had, even at 21 years old, I had the personality that you go, well, if anyone's going to do it, it would be you.
Right.
So, why not? And that doesn't mean you had to give me money, but I just, and I think too, I think something that's interesting, and I, for lack of a better term, I call it the Shark Tank effect. But I think entrepreneurship's viewed a lot differently now than it was 20 years ago. I think, it's a lot cooler. I think it's a lot easier to understand. So now, but that's a blessing and a curse, because so part of me says, hey, if I was starting out now, people would go, oh, you're starting a business. That's so cool. What are you going to do? Write a book, start a podcast, develop online education, publish content on LinkedIn. Yeah. And I think people would understand it a lot more. I mean, now it's funny, when I started speaking on college campuses in the United States, yeah, I knew all the speakers, right? There were only a handful of people that did it, and they all made a lot of money and were really good at it. Now everyone's a speaker, everyone, so it's very difficult to do. But so anyway, so that Shark Tank effect, I think people are a lot more receptive to the idea of someone being an entrepreneur and encouraging them. The problem is that now everyone thinks they can do it. Now everyone thinks it's really easy. Now everyone, because you see what you see on TV. And I happen to know a lot of people that were on Shark Tank, and there are a handful that are absolutely killing it. There are many of them that people think are incredibly successful that are month to month in their business and really struggling and have to continue to raise more money. So now people think entrepreneurship is easier than it is. Anyone can do it. Everyone's going to be on TV, and it's like that's not the case. So now I think people that maybe aren't built for it either think it's easier or get into it when they shouldn't. So we've gone from, hey, it's really hard and it's this mysterious thing and very few people can do it, to now everyone thinking they can do it.
Right.
And it's still tough. In some ways, it's a lot easier to start a business now than it's ever been, because you can build a website for free, and you can start a podcast, and you can publish content on social media that could attract potential customers. So all of that's great. I think the problem is that because so many people are doing it, and because so many people have a product to sell, it's really tough to break through, especially if you don't have tens of thousands of dollars a month to spend on digital marketing.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So, Tom, now I'm curious, right? With everything that was being said when you were younger, how long did it take you to then get your book out and actually start speaking on stages?
Yeah, it was 15 months.
Ooh.
And I remember that because I, from some family and friends, I was able to borrow enough money to give me about a 2 to 3 year runway. So in my mind, I knew what I needed to live off of on a monthly basis, and I had about 24 to 36 times that amount.
Okay.
Now, some of that had to go to, web design and some marketing and some conferences. So, I mean, there were some expenses built in there, but I'm like, I think I have about 2 to 3 years to figure this out.
Wow.
One of the things in my life I'm most proud of is all of that money I borrowed, I was able to pay back in 15 months. So what
Wow.
happened was I made no money. because I'm, trying to write a book and I'm trying to get myself out there as a speaker and I'm trying to figure it all out. So, month one, month two, month three, I'm just kind of grinding. And I went to a conference, and these things still exist, but they're a little bit different now. But I went to a conference where everyone was looking for speakers for college campuses. And I went there and I had like 6 different people say, we'd love to bring you in. And all the way it worked out, all 6 of those speaking engagements were in like a 10-day span.
Oh,
So I
wow.
went from making no money to making 6 paid speaking gigs, check after check after check. It was like, wow, that's pretty wild. And so I got a lot of momentum. Again, it took 15 months, but I got a lot of momentum very, very quickly. And then I was able to, get my own apartment and pay back the money that I had borrowed. And, it's still, obviously still had a lot of hard work to go, but that was a huge milestone for me. So that's a great question. And yeah, that's the way I approached it was, okay, how much runway can I give myself? So
Yeah.
and I don't remember the numbers, but and of course the numbers were a lot lower then because living was a lot cheaper. So I mean, it was something like I could live off of 2,500 a month or 2,200 a month, whatever that number was. And I said, okay, so if I have that amount times 2 to 3 years, so 24 to 36 months, okay, that's what I need. And that was reassuring because then I was like, okay, I have, it's not like I had to wake up every morning going, okay, if I don't make money today, I'm screwed. And I think a lot of times what's tough in entrepreneurship is there's a lot of uncertainties. And at least for me, when I'm uncertain, I get stressed out. So when I don't have control and I don't have certainty and I really don't know what's going to happen, that's when I'm at my highest stress level. When I lower my stress, I say, okay, I have 24 months to figure this out. And I know what my goal is for today and for this week and for this month and for this quarter. And I've got all that figured out. So now, even though I don't know when a check's coming in and I don't know if this is going to work, I at least feel like I have some control. I know what I need to do. I know that I have some runway. But I think where people, I mean, to use a cliche, give themselves a nervous breakdown, although sometimes that does happen. But when something like that happens, or a ton of stress or a ton of anxiety or not sleeping at night, a lot of that is just uncertainty. So in a very unscientific, uncertain game, entrepreneurship, how do you create as much structure and certainty as possible? Having money, knowing how long that money will last you, having a step-by-step plan of what you think you need to do, all those things at least make it a little bit more, consumable, I think.
Tom, can I just stop you there? I think the sun has moved, and
Yes.
there's a reflection right on your mouth on the screen. Right?
Oh, let me
I don't
try
know
to
if you
move
can.
I'll try to move my camera. There we
There
go.
we go. It's disappeared. There we.
Yeah, so we started this at 6 a.m. in Arizona. So you're catching. Yeah, it was dark when we started. Now the
Yeah,
sun's rising over a mountain. Yeah, isn't that wild? So yeah,
it is.
you're witnessing the sunrise in Arizona.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Tom. All right. So that's amazing. Oh my goodness. So I'm gonna be nosy now because I know the listeners are probably thinking, okay, so you had all those speaking engagements come all at once to you, right? How much did you make?
So they were all the same because when I went to that conference, you kind of stated your price. Those were 3,500 each. That was that was a long time ago. That was on the lower end of speaking on campuses. My thought process was don't get greedy.
Right.
You need to generate revenue and you need to get your reps, right? Meaning you've got to, I had never booked a speaking gig before. So the contracting process and, booking travel and going and speaking and having the right technology. I had never been in front of an audience. So I wanted, volume. And I think that's a good lesson in again, you don't want to price yourself low forever. You need to know your value. I get all that stuff, but you learn a lot more by being in the game than sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So if I go and speak 6 times, I'm going to learn a lot more than if I speak 3 times or I speak once. And 6 times 3,500 is a lot more than 2 times 5,000.
Right.
It is. So that was my thought process. I was definitely on the lower end. But yeah, that was it. It was 30. Okay. So I got 6 times 35. There you go. That's 21,000 overnight that, hadn't, so
Right.
that was a huge win for me.
Absolutely. Now, we have a lot of listeners here that are either speakers or looking to get into speaking. And you already mentioned, things are now very different,
Oof.
right? So if someone's very new and they want to go out speaking, I know they're like, okay, I need to have a speaker one sheet. I need to have my presentations done. I got to make sure I get a stylist and I'll look good and, right? But let's get down to the nitty gritty and just talk about what is important for you as a business owner to be ready and get on stage. What are the things that should we be looking at right at the get-go?
Well, one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me many years ago was good enough is good enough.
Ah,
And what happens is we think everything needs to be perfect.
right.
And we think we need to have the greatest website in the world and the greatest LinkedIn and the greatest Instagram and the greatest website and the greatest highlight video and the greatest book and the greatest podcast and the greatest personal brand. If you looked back at what I went out of the gate with, meaning my initial book cover, my initial one-sheeter, my initial banner that I hung behind the booth at that conference, I swear to you, it's not just bad, it's cringeworthy, embarrassingly bad.
Oh no.
I
Okay.
mean, I have the image in my mind. I don't ever want anyone to see it again. I mean, I'll just tell you, I was wearing a suit. I was
Mhm.
21 years old. I looked like a little boy. The suit didn't fit me properly. It was way too baggy. I mean, it was horrible. But the
Mhm.
point was, I was out there. I was in the game, and it's like you can't sit behind your computer for 5 years trying to be perfect. So I think you have to accept the fact when you enter in, we say speaking, but anything where you're the business, you're the brand, speaking, coaching, consulting, gig work. I mean, anything, any of this stuff, when you're using your subject matter expertise and you're trying to sell that, you just have to be insanely vulnerable. Like,
Right.
you have to just be like, okay, here's my face. And you can't, there's no way to escape that because people are buying you. So, sometimes people go, well, I don't want to be the face of this. I'll lead with with my company brand. So my company brand is, ABC company. Well, nobody wants to buy a brand. They want to buy a person. So they say, well, I want to work with Kay. I want to work with Tom. So I want to see their face. I want to see them smiling. I want to know that they're a nice person. I want to find out why they're credible. They're buying you or not buying you. So you have no choice. You have to be the face of this. It has to be your face. It has to be you speaking on stage. You have to brag about yourself. Like, still to this day, when you were reading my bio at the beginning of that, it's
Mhm.
completely uncomfortable. It's not natural to me. I don't like watching video of me speak, but you don't have a choice. So
Right.
you have to embrace that. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to understand that good enough is good enough, because whatever you go out there with, it's not going to be great. And it's going to take you a while to be great. And even when you are great, you're going to know that you can be better. You're going to be better on stage. Your promo video is going to be better. Your website's going to be better. It's constantly an evolution and a moving target, but you have to put yourself out there. And, just some other stuff. I mean, I think, repetitions are key. So, if I was starting out speaking right now, just how much content can I produce? I need to start a podcast. I need to write a book. I need to write an ebook. I need to start an online course that's going to be free that I'm going to get out there. I need to be on as many podcasts as possible, because let me tell you something. If you go and do 10 podcast interviews, you're going to be a lot sharper. You're going to find your story. You're going to say things and go, well, that was interesting, and write it down so you can develop some content. It's no different with speaking on stage. Are you going to be better the first time you speak or the 20th time you speak? Well, then how quickly can I get to 20 times? Last thing I'll tell you, and this was something that I didn't initially do. It took me a few years to really figure it out, but and it's terribly uncomfortable to do. But find people that'll give you feedback, and not feedback of, oh my, not like my aunt. Oh, Tommy, I'm so proud of you. That was the best speech I've ever heard. No, that's very nice to hear, but that's not feedback.
Right.
Feedback is, a mentor of mine, he sat in the back of one of my speaking gigs, and he sat there with a yellow pad, and he took multiple pages of notes. And he's a straight shooter, and I knew it wasn't going to be pretty, but I knew that I would get better if he gave me feedback. And some of the things he said was, you have to get funnier faster. And what he meant by that was, you got on stage for an hour and you were like a drill sergeant, and your heart was in the right place and you delivered great content, but at no point did you say anything that was even remotely funny.
Wow.
Put in some jokes. These people are sitting there for an hour. Say a couple things that are funny. There were some things stage presence wise. You weren't moving around enough. You were a little too sedentary. You got to be running around the room. So getting that feedback. You weren't telling enough stories. You need to, over the course of an hour, tell 6 or 8 really, really good stories. And every story should be interesting. It should be, and it should have a point. So now when I get up, I'm programmed now. I tell a story, and folks, the reason I'm telling you this story is, and there's a lesson. So there's a story. Some of those stories are really, really funny because, you want to make people laugh, and they all have a moral to the story. So, things like that make you a lot better. So, but you have to ask the right people for feedback. So here's my website. Tell me how I can make it better. Here's my promo reel. Tell me how I can make it better. Here's an hour of me speaking on stage. Please watch it and give me really detailed feedback. And that's what makes you better, getting out there and getting that feedback. It's not just sitting there playing around on PowerPoint all day.
Right. Oh my goodness. I love that, Tom. So many golden nuggets in such a short amount of time. I know at this point, everyone's thinking, oh my goodness, how do I get hold of Tom? How do I connect with him? If I want to maybe work with him, how do I do that? So where can they go to connect with you?
Best place is LinkedIn. And for a couple of reasons. One is, I spend a lot of time on there. If I can help you at all or be a resource, obviously, please send me a message. I post content on there. I think there's some things I do well on LinkedIn. You can always be better, but I do put a lot of content out there. I structure it a certain way. There's, some components of it. So it's just a good place, again, from a personal branding standpoint, and a place to reach out to me if I can be of value to you, or there's anyone I can introduce you to, and then some of the stuff I publish. So please connect with me on LinkedIn, Tom Healy, TomHealy. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, so I'm pretty easy to find on there. But yeah, I'd love to connect with you on there. And again, if I can be a resource at all, please don't hesitate to ask.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, if you had last words to share with our audience regards to entrepreneur, business, or speaking, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's not anything earth-shattering, but let me just reinforce that you've got to work really, really hard. You've got to be the Energizer Bunny. And when someone tells you can't do something, or someone rejects your proposal, or you lose a client, or things are moving slower than you would like them to, or your great marketing idea that was going to change everything doesn't work, when all those things happen, you got to pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep going. You need to be a little a little stupid in this game. You can't you can't overthink this stuff. I think there's something to be said for a little bit of stupidity, and a little bit of being naive, and a little bit of just not being willing being willing to let people control you. But you just have to do that, right? You just have to go, keep working, keep moving at a fast velocity. I think that's where people get themselves in trouble, is they don't move fast enough. Because when you move fast, you can overcome a lot of mistakes and a lot of issues. But when you move slow, your margin of error goes way down. So if you go and have a ton of energy, and don't have bad days and don't have bad weeks, as long as you're moving at a quick rate, your failures fail a lot faster, and you get to where you want to go a lot faster. So I don't necessarily think people move with enough velocity. And I think the more velocity you move with, the easier things become, the margin of error goes up, success happens a lot quicker. And then, as you know, success builds on each other, and momentum is everything in this game.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Wow, Tom. I just feel like I should just keep the mic on, just keep going. I can speak to you forever for sure. Um, but Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, right? Like I said, like everything that comes out of your mouth is a golden nugget. Oh my goodness. And guys, if you've listened to this entire episode, and if you haven't, you need to listen to it. But go and connect with Tom. Go and check him out on LinkedIn. Go and hunt him down, right? Search him on the internet, online. Go to his website. And please do reach out to him if you need help. He will be able to help you in so many ways. Tom, once again, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the thoughtful questions.
No worries. Thanks for listening to Make Your Mark podcast at www.makeyourmarkpodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get this and every other episode that comes out. We have lots of great stuff coming, so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And thank you in advance for all the reviews and comments. I appreciate it so much, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.